The great hall of the Galactic Council sparkled with light that bounced off its crystal walls. 200 alien species sat in curved rows that went up and up like a giant bowl. At the center stood Ambassador Tay, the only human in the room. Her face showed no emotion as she listened to High Counselor Zathrax finish his speech. And so, by a vote of 173 to 27, the Council has decided that humanity will no longer hold a seat among us, Zathrax said. His 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of satisfaction among his kind. Earth and its colonies must withdraw from Council space within 1 standard quarter cycle. The hall grew quiet. Many Council members leaned forward, waiting for the humans' response. Humans were known for their emotional outbursts, their stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Some expected shouting. Others thought Tay might beg for another chance. A few worried she might even threaten violence. Instead, Tay simply nodded. "We understand," she said, her voice clear and calm. "Humanity will withdraw as requested. Thank you for 300 years of partnership." She bowed slightly, gathered her data tablet, and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the silent hall. Zathrax's satisfaction faded to confusion. This was not the reaction he had expected. "Ambassador Tay," he called out. "You have nothing else to say?" Tay stopped at the doorway and turned. "What would be the point, High Counselor?" "The Council has spoken. We respect your decision." With that, she was gone. In the observation deck above the hall, Council scientist Jiho watched the scene with growing worry. Unlike Ambassador Tay, Jiho was not fully human. His grandfather had come from Earth, but he had been born on a Council world and had worked his way up through the science division. Now he feared his human ancestry would make others suspicious of him. "That was unexpected," said senior scientist Varex, standing beside him. Varex was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed almost transparent. "I predicted at least some protest from the humans." Jiho nodded. "Humans are not always what you expect." "You sound concerned," Varex noted. "I am," Jiho admitted. "I've studied Earth history. When humans go quiet instead of fighting back, it often means they're planning something." Varex laughed, a whistling sound through his breathing slits. "Planning what?" "They have no choice but to leave. Their technology is mostly copied from Council designs. Their military is small compared to ours. They are just one species among hundreds." Jiho didn't argue, but he knew better. During his research visits to Earth, he had seen things the Council didn't know about. Human ingenuity, their ability to solve problems in ways no other species considered, their habit of building backup systems for their backup systems, and most importantly, their patience. "I should file my report on the meeting," Jiho said, excusing himself. On his way back to his lab, he passed a group of human diplomatic staff packing their belongings. They worked efficiently, their faces as calm as Tay's had been. No anger, no sadness, just quiet acceptance. One of them, a young woman named Hana, looked up as Jiho passed. She recognized his partial human features and gave him a small smile. "You should visit Earth someday," she said, "when things settle down." "I would like that," Jiho replied, though he knew it might now be impossible. Later that day, Ambassador Tay sat alone in her office on the human diplomatic vessel. The room was mostly packed up, with only her desk and communication system still in place. She pressed her palm against the security scanner, opening a secure channel to Earth Command. The face of General Kim appeared on the screen. "It's done then?" he asked. "Yes," Tay replied. "The vote went as expected," Kim nodded. "And your performance?" "Also as planned. They were confused by our lack of reaction. It will make them wonder, perhaps even worry a little." "Good," Kim said. "Operation Silent Retreat is now active. All human outposts in Council space have been notified. We begin withdrawal immediately." "Any issues I should be aware of?" Tay asked. "None so far. All critical personnel have already been quietly replaced over the past year. As you suggested, non-essential facilities are being shut down in ways that won't disrupt Council operations." Kim paused. "At least not right away." Tay allowed herself a small smile. "And our friends?" 23 species have secretly expressed interest in maintaining relations with us outside Council supervision. Mostly the newer members who've also felt the sting of Council arrogance. "More than I expected," Tay admitted. "Humans aren't the only ones who can play the long game, Ambassador. Your ship leaves tomorrow." "Yes, we'll be the last to go as a courtesy." Safe journey then. Earth awaits your return. The connection ended and Tay looked out her window at the massive council station. For 3 centuries, humans had tried to be good partners. They had shared technology, helped defend council worlds against outside threats, established trade routes that benefited everyone. But in return, they had received only suspicion and finally rejection. The council believed humans were just another minor species, useful but not essential. They thought the decision to remove humanity was a simple matter of politics with few consequences. They were wrong. The next morning, the human diplomatic vessel detached from the station. There was no ceremony, no formal farewell. Council members were already busy arguing over who would take over the responsibilities humans had handled. From the main council chamber, Zathrax watched the human ship move away from the station, then jump to faster than light speed, disappearing in a flash of light. That's that. Then, he said to no one in particular, back to business. But in his private thoughts, he felt a strange unease. The humans had given up too easily. In all his years dealing with them, he had never seen humans accept defeat without a fight. Over the next few days, human ships departed from every council world and station. Their buildings and facilities were left in perfect order, with detailed instructions for their continued operation. Everything was done properly by the book. The humans even left gifts for those who had worked closely with them. In his lab, Jiho received a small plant in a self-sustaining container. The note simply read, "A piece of earth for you. It adapts to any environment. Humans do too." Hana Jiho placed the plant on his desk and wondered what would happen next. The council believed it had simply removed one troublesome voice from its ranks. Jiho suspected it had done something far more significant. It had freed humanity from council rules and limitations. A week after the humans left, Zathrax called a special meeting of the council's executive committee. "I want a complete assessment of all systems and operations previously managed by humans," he ordered. "Make sure nothing was sabotaged." "Is that really necessary?" asked Councillor Drex of the Commerce Guild. "The humans left peacefully." "Too peacefully," Zathrax replied. "I want to be certain they didn't leave any surprises behind." The assessment took 3 days and found nothing wrong. Every system worked perfectly. Every database was intact. Every protocol was documented, you see, Drex said when the results were presented. The humans accepted their dismissal with dignity. Perhaps we misjudged them. Zathrax wasn't convinced, but he had no evidence to support his suspicions. "Very well," he said finally. "Let us consider the matter closed. The council will move forward without humanity." But as he left the meeting, he passed Jiho in the hallway. The scientist was studying data on his tablet, his face concerned. "Is there a problem, Scientist Jiho?" Zathrax asked. Jiho looked up, surprised. "No, High Counselor. Just reviewing some routine maintenance schedules." "For human systems?" "No, sir. For our deep space monitoring network. It's nothing important." Zathrax nodded and continued on his way. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The humans had strolled away too quietly. And in his experience, silence from humans was rarely a good sign. He was right to worry. Though he didn't know it yet, the council would soon discover what it meant to lose the species it had so casually dismissed. The first signs would appear in just 3 months. By then it would already be too late. 3 months after the humans left council space, strange problems began to appear. In the busy shipyards of Torval Prime, production slowed to a crawl. Ships that should have taken days to build now took weeks. Parts didn't fit together properly. Materials arrived late or not at all. "I don't understand," the shipyard director complained to his staff. "Nothing has changed in our processes." But something had changed. The human engineers who had quietly fixed small problems and improved systems were gone. The clever shortcuts they had developed were forgotten. The networks of suppliers they had built over centuries had collapsed. Similar issues appeared across council space. On the agricultural world of Vex 3, crop yields dropped by 15%. In the medical centers of Rylax, new treatments suddenly took twice as long to develop. The council's famous prediction algorithms, which helped plan everything from food distribution to military deployments, became less accurate each day. At first, no one connected these problems to the humans' departure. Each world, each facility, each department tried to solve its own issues. But as the problems grew worse, patterns emerged. Hana, the young engineer who had once given Jiho a plant, had not returned to Earth with the other humans. Born on a council world, she had chosen to stay and take a position in the Central Systems Authority. Now, 3 months after the human withdrawal, she sat in a cramped office surrounded by data screens, trying to understand why the council's main power grid was becoming unstable. "It doesn't make sense," she muttered to herself. "All the components are working correctly. All the programming is intact." She pulled up old maintenance records going back years. That's when she noticed something odd. Regular updates to the grid's operating systems had stopped exactly when the humans left. "But we should be able to do those updates ourselves," she said, frowning. She dug deeper and discovered that the update protocols were written in a human programming language that few council technicians understood. Hana spent the next 2 days learning the language and studying the update system. What she found shocked her. The grid wasn't just a power distribution network. It was also constantly analyzing usage patterns and making tiny adjustments to improve efficiency. Without those adjustments, the grid was slowly becoming less stable. And it wasn't just the power grid. As Hana investigated further, she found human-designed systems everywhere, all quietly doing essential work that no one else understood. She took her findings to her supervisor, who took them to his supervisor, and eventually, the information reached Jiho at the science division. Jiho wasn't surprised. He had predicted something like this would happen, though even he hadn't realized how deeply humans had integrated themselves into council infrastructure. It wasn't sabotage. The humans hadn't broken anything when they left. They had simply taken their knowledge and skills with them. Jiho requested an emergency meeting with the High Counselor. Sathrax, already dealing with complaints from dozens of worlds, agreed to see him immediately. "It's worse than I thought," Jiho explained, showing Zathrax the data Hana had collected. Humans weren't just members of the council. They were its hidden support system. "They fixed problems before most of us even knew the problems existed." Zathrax's 6 eyes narrowed. "Are you saying they deliberately made us dependent on them?" "No," Jiho said carefully. "I'm saying they naturally filled gaps in our systems. Humans are problem solvers by nature. They see inefficiency and they fix it, often without being asked. We came to rely on those fixes without realizing it. So what do we do now?" Zathrax demanded. "We need to bring back human experts, at least temporarily, to teach us their methods. Or we need to send our people to learn from them." Zathrax made a dismissive gesture. "Out of the question. The council has made its decision. We will not go begging to humans for help. Then we need to invest massive resources in figuring out their systems ourselves," Jiho said. "Make it happen," Zathrax ordered. But it wasn't that simple. Over the next month, more systems began to fail. Trade routes that humans had once patrolled faced increasing attacks from pirates. Specialized alloys used in starship construction became harder to produce as the human metallurgists who had refined the processes were no longer available. Most concerning of all, communication with the outer colonies became less reliable. Strange signals were detected at the edges of council space. But the Deep Space Monitoring Network, another system humans had helped design, couldn't identify their source. In her new role as an emergency systems analyst, Hana worked day and night trying to understand and repair human-designed technology. She recruited other engineers with human ancestry or experience working with humans. Together, they began to rebuild some of the lost knowledge, but it wasn't enough. The problems were growing faster than solutions could be found. 6 months after the humans left, the first council member species broke ranks. The Tellarites, who had always maintained good relations with humans, announced they were establishing direct trade with Earth outside council authority. "We cannot afford to cut ourselves off from human innovation," the Tellarite ambassador declared. "The council's decision was short-sighted and our people are suffering for it." 3 more species followed the Tellarites within weeks. Zathrax called an emergency council session to address the crisis. "This rebellion cannot be tolerated," he told the assembled representatives. "Any species that deals directly with humans will face sanctions." But his threat rang hollow. The council's ability to enforce its rules had weakened without human support for its peacekeeping fleet. More importantly, the 4 rebel species were now receiving advanced technology and economic assistance from humanity, giving them advantages over those who remained loyal to the council. After the session, Jiho found Hana waiting outside his lab. "It's getting worse," she said without greeting. The power grid on Rylax failed completely yesterday. 3 million people without power for 6 hours. Jiho sighed. I know. High Counselor Zathrax asked me to find a solution, but we don't have enough trained personnel. There is another option, Hana said quietly. I've heard rumors about a human trading post in the Kyrix sector. Outside council space, but not too far. They're offering technical assistance to anyone who asks. Zathrax would never approve of asking humans for help. We wouldn't have to tell him, Hana suggested. I could go alone, unofficially, just to learn what we need to know. Jiho considered this. It was risky. If discovered, they would both face charges of treason. But the alternative was watching more systems fail, more people suffer. I'll arrange transport, he said finally. Be ready to leave tomorrow. The next day, Hana boarded a small research vessel bound for the edge of council space. Officially, she was conducting a survey of power systems on outer colonies. Unofficially, she would slip across the border into the Kyrix sector as soon as she was out of monitoring range. The journey took 3 days. When she arrived at the coordinates she'd been given, Hana found not the small trading post she expected, but a massive space station. It gleamed with lights surrounded by ships from dozens of species, many of them from council worlds. She docked her vessel and stepped onto the station. The contrast with council facilities was immediate. Everything looked newer, cleaner, more efficient. Aliens of all kinds moved purposefully through wide corridors, engaged in trade and conversation. A human woman approached her. Welcome to New Horizon Station, she said. I'm Director Yuna, you must be Hana. Hana was startled. How did you know who I am? Yuna smiled. We've been expecting you. Or someone like you. The council's systems are failing exactly as we predicted. You're here for help, yes? Yes, Hana admitted. But I don't understand. How did you build all this so quickly? We didn't build it after we left, Yuna explained, leading Hana through the station. We built it years ago as a contingency plan. Humans always prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. She showed Hana to a large teaching center, where humans were training aliens from various species in technology, agriculture, and medicine. You can join any class you wish, Yuna said. Stay as long as you need. When you return to council space, you'll take knowledge with you that will help your people. Why would you help us? Hana asked. After the council rejected humanity? Yuna's expression grew serious. Because not everyone on the council voted against us. Because innocent people shouldn't suffer for their leader's pride. And because someday the council will need to understand that pushing humanity away was their biggest mistake. As Hana began her training, she wondered what else humanity had prepared during their centuries in the council. And what would happen when the council discovered just how much they had lost when the humans strolled away quietly. 1 year after humanity's quiet departure from the Galactic Council, an alarm sounded in the deep space monitoring station on the edge of council territory. The night shift operator, a junior technician named Molo, stared at his screen in confusion. Strange energy signatures were appearing at the very limit of sensor range. Molo followed protocol and sent an alert to Central Command. Then he waited for instructions, nervously watching as the signatures grew stronger. 3 hours later, Commander Do-hyun arrived at the station. Half-human like Jiho, Do-hyun had risen through the ranks of the Council Defense Force despite facing constant suspicion about his loyalty. Now he was one of the few senior officers left with any understanding of the defense systems humans had helped design. Show me the readings, he ordered as soon as he entered the monitoring room. Molo brought up the data. The energy signatures had multiplied and were definitely moving toward council space. Do-hyun's face darkened. Have you ever seen anything like this before? No, sir, Molo replied. The computer can't identify them either. Do-hyun activated his personal data device and compared the readings to classified records. What he found made his blood run cold. Lock down the station, he ordered. No communications in or out except on my authority. I need to speak with High Counselor Zathrax immediately. 3 hours later, Do-hyun stood before an emergency session of the Council Defense Committee. Zathrax sat at the center, his 6 eyes fixed on the commander. Explain these readings, Zathrax demanded. Do-hyun activated a holographic display showing the strange energy signatures, now clearly moving in formation. These match records from an encounter 300 years ago, he explained. Before most of you were born. They are ships of the Void Collective. Murmurs spread through the committee room. The Void Collective was almost a legend now, an ancient machine, intelligence that had nearly conquered the galaxy. Before being driven back by the combined forces of the Council and its new human allies, the collective was destroyed. One committee member objected. No, Do-hyun corrected. It was contained, pushed back to a region of dead stars beyond the outer rim. Humans built a network of monitoring stations to watch for their return, and defense platforms to prevent it. If that's true, why are they returning now? Zathrax asked, his tone suspicious. Do-hyun met his gaze steadily. Because when humans left Council space, they took their engineers and technicians with them. The people who maintained those defense platforms. The people who understood how the collective thinks and operates. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Are you suggesting humans deliberately allowed this threat to return? Zathrax finally asked. No, Do-hyun said firmly. I'm saying the Council dismissed the very people who were keeping this threat at bay. People whose importance you never fully understood. Zathrax's eye membranes fluttered in agitation. How long do we have? At their current speed, the collective will reach our outer colonies in 30 days. And how do we stop them? Do-hyun hesitated. I don't know if we can. The weapons designed to fight them require specialized knowledge that left with the humans. Then we will use conventional weapons, Zathrax declared. Assemble the fleet, Commander. Every available ship. We will meet this threat with the full might of the Council. Do-hyun wanted to argue but knew it would be pointless. Instead, he bowed and left to carry out his orders, already certain they would not be enough. As Council forces mobilized, news of the approaching threat leaked to the public. Panic spread through outer colonies, with many residents fleeing toward the Council core worlds. Trade routes became clogged with refugee ships. Resources grew scarce. In his laboratory on the Council capital world, Jiho received an urgent message from Hana. She had returned from the human station months ago, bringing valuable knowledge about Council systems but keeping her true destination secret. Now she needed to see him immediately. When Jiho arrived at her small apartment, he found Hana with a secure communication device he had never seen before. What is that? He asked. A direct link to human space, she replied. Given to me by Director Yuna before I left New Horizon Station. She said to use it only in an emergency. Hana's expression was grave. The Void Collective is back, Jiho nodded. I know. Commander Do-hyun has mobilized the fleet to intercept them. It won't be enough, Hana said. I've studied the old records. The collective adapts to conventional weapons very quickly. We need the specialized technology humans developed. Can your contact help us? Jiho asked, nodding toward the communication device. I hope so. Hana activated the device. After a moment of static, Director Yuna's face appeared on the small screen. You've heard about the collective, Yuna said without preamble. Yes, Hana replied. The Council is preparing to fight, but they'll be slaughtered, Yuna finished for her. The collective has had 300 years to evolve. Your conventional weapons will be useless. We need help, Jiho said, stepping into view. Not just weapons, but knowledge. Yuna was silent for a moment. I'll pass your request to Earth Command, but I can't promise anything. The Council made its choice when it expelled humanity. Innocent people will die, Hana protested. I know, Yuna said softly. That's why I'll try. But the decision isn't mine to make. The communication ended, leaving Hana and Jiho to wait and hope. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Sung stood in the command center of humanity's defense force, watching as data streamed in about the Void Collective's advance. Around him, officers and analysts worked with quiet efficiency, monitoring the situation. His lieutenant, a young woman named Jin, approached with a report. Sir, we've received a request for assistance from contacts within Council space. The collective will reach their outer colonies in less than 30 days. Sung nodded. I expected this. What's our status? The fleet is ready, Jin replied. All ships equipped with anti-collective weapons are on standby. But we need your decision, sir. Do we intervene? Admiral Sung looked at the strategic display, showing the position of the collective forces and the Council's hastily assembled fleet. It was clear who would win that confrontation. The Council dismissed us, he said quietly, treated us as inferior for centuries, then pushed us away when they decided we were too troublesome. Now they face the consequences. So we do nothing? Jin asked, her expression troubled. I didn't say that. Sung tapped controls on his console, bringing up a new display showing human territory and allies. Prepare a defensive perimeter along our borders. If the collective defeats the council, they'll come for us next. And the council itself? Jin pressed. Sung was silent for a moment. They need to understand the true cost of dismissing us. Sometimes the best teacher is consequence. He looked at his lieutenant. But we won't let the collective destroy them entirely. Prepare a second fleet, our best ships, best crews. Position them just outside council space, ready to intervene if the situation becomes truly desperate. Yes, sir. Jin hesitated. Some would say we should let the council fall after how they treated us. Some would, Sung agreed. But that's not who we are. Humans protect life even when that life has rejected us. We just need to make sure the council learns its lesson this time. As Jin left to relay his orders, Sung turned back to the strategic display. The coming weeks would reshape the galaxy's power structure. He needed to be certain humanity emerged in the strongest possible position. Back in council space, Commander Do-hyun stood on the bridge of the flagship Unyielding Justice, looking out at the assembled fleet. 170 ships of various sizes and capabilities, the largest fleet the council had mobilized in centuries. Under different circumstances, it would have been an impressive sight, but Do-hyun knew it wasn't enough. His engineers had spent days trying to modify their weapons based on old records of collective weaknesses, but without human expertise, the modifications were crude approximations at best. He turned to his second-in-command. Status report. All ships in position, Commander. The collective will enter weapons range in 6 hours. Do-hyun nodded. Send one last message to Central Command. Request any additional information they might have on collective vulnerabilities. Yes, sir. Do you think they'll find anything useful? Do-hyun didn't answer directly. When I was a child, my human mother told me stories about the first collective invasion. How humans and the council fought side by side to drive them back. How that shared victory led to humanity joining the council. He shook his head. 300 years of partnership ended by pride and fear. Sir? His second-in-command looked confused. Never mind, Do-hyun said. Prepare the fleet for battle. We fight with what we have. As his orders were relayed across the fleet, Do-hyun allowed himself one moment of private doubt. The council had driven away its strongest ally just before its greatest threat returned. Now they would pay the price for that mistake. He only hoped the cost wouldn't be too high. The battle lasted less than 3 hours. The council fleet under Commander Do-hyun fought bravely, but they were outmatched from the start. The Void Collective's ships, sleek black machines that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, moved with perfect coordination. Their weapons cut through council shields as if they weren't there. From his position on the bridge of the Unyielding Justice, Do-hyun watched as ship after ship was disabled or destroyed. His own vessel shuddered continuously as enemy fire struck its weakening shields. Retreat, he finally ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. All ships fall back to the secondary defense line. Only 63 of the original 170 ships made it to the fallback position. The others were lost along with their crews, and the Void Collective continued its advance, barely slowed by the Council's best efforts. 3 days later, the first Council colony world fell. The planet Nexus 7, home to 4 million civilians, was overrun by collective forces. Most of the population was evacuated in time, but the planet itself, with its valuable resources and strategic position, was lost. In the council chamber, panic spread as news of the defeat arrived. Representatives from worlds near the invasion path demanded immediate protection. Others called for peace negotiations with the collective, though no one knew if the machine intelligence could be reasoned with. A few even suggested secretly reaching out to humanity for help, though none dared say this where Zathrax could hear. The High Counselor himself seemed to age years in a matter of days. His confidence shattered by the fleet's defeat, he now listened desperately to advice from military leaders who had no solutions to offer. We need new weapons, he insisted during an emergency session, something the collective hasn't seen before. That would take years of research, replied the head of the science division. We don't have years. We barely have weeks. Then what do you suggest? Zathrax demanded. No one answered. The terrible truth hung unspoken in the air. Without human help, the council might not survive. As the meeting ended in grim silence, Jiho approached Zathrax privately. High Counselor, I must speak with you about a sensitive matter. Zathrax gestured for him to continue. I believe I know someone who might help us, Jiho said carefully. An engineer with connections to human space. Zathrax's eyes narrowed. You mean a spy? No, Jiho said quickly. Someone who visited a human trading station seeking technical knowledge when our systems began failing. Someone who might be able to request assistance now. Under normal circumstances, Zathrax would have ordered Jiho arrested immediately for revealing such a breach of council law. But these were not normal circumstances. The collective had taken 3 more worlds since Nexus 7, and the refugee crisis was overwhelming the inner systems. Bring this person to me, Zathrax ordered, quietly. That evening, Hana stood nervously before the High Counselor in his private chambers. She had just finished explaining her visit to New Horizon Station and her contact with Director Yuna. You betrayed the Council, Zathrax said, but his tone held more weariness than anger. I was trying to help, Hana replied. Our systems were failing. People were suffering. And now more are dying. Zathrax moved to the window looking out at the capital city's skyline. Can your human contact help us against the collective? I don't know, Hana admitted. But I can ask. Zathrax was silent for a long moment. 300 years of council history and tradition argued against seeking help from a species they had rejected. His own pride resisted the idea of begging humans to rescue them. But pride would not save his people. Do it, he said finally. Tell them the council requests assistance against our common enemy. We are prepared to offer reinstatement and expanded privileges in exchange. Hana bowed and left to send the message, relief evident on her face. Jiho, waiting outside, gave her an encouraging nod as they hurried to her apartment, where the communication device was hidden. Director Yuna responded almost immediately when Hana activated the device. We've been monitoring the situation, she said. The collective has taken 7 worlds already. The High Counselor himself is asking for help, Hana said. He offers reinstatement and expanded privileges for humanity. Yuna's expression didn't change. I'll relay the message to Earth Command. But I should warn you, the terms may not be acceptable. What do you mean? Jiho asked. What more could humans want? It's not about wanting more, Yuna explained. It's about not wanting to return to a relationship that never truly valued us. We didn't leave to be invited back, Hana. We left because the council never saw us as equals. The communication ended, leaving Hana and Jiho to wonder what would happen next. They didn't have to wait long. The next morning, they were summoned back to Zathrax's chambers, where they found the High Counselor looking even more haggard than before. The collective has broken through our secondary defense line, he told them without preamble. Commander Dohyun reports they will reach the core worlds within 2 weeks. Have you heard back from the humans? Hana asked. Yes. Zathrax's voice was bitter. They refuse our offer of reinstatement. Instead, they propose sending a delegation to discuss alternative arrangements for cooperation against the collective. When will they arrive? Jiho asked. Tomorrow. I'm sending a high-speed diplomatic vessel to bring them from the border. Zathrax turned to face them directly. I want both of you present at the meeting. Your familiarity with humans may be useful. The delegation arrived the next day as promised. It consisted of just 3 humans, Ambassador Tae, who had left so calmly a year before, Admiral Sung, commander of Earth's defense forces, and a civilian scientist named June, an expert on the Void Collective. The meeting took place in a small conference room rather than the Grand Council chamber, a concession to urgency rather than protocol. Zathrax, along with 5 senior counselors, faced the human delegation across a simple table. Welcome back to Council Space, Zathrax said, his tone carefully neutral. Thank you for the invitation. High Counselor, Ambassador Tae replied with equal formality. We understand time is short, so let's address the situation directly. The Void Collective has conquered 7 council worlds and will reach your core system soon. You need our help to stop them. Yes, Zathrax acknowledged. And you have refused our offer of reinstatement. We have, Tae confirmed. Humanity does not wish to rejoin the council under the old terms, or perhaps any terms. Murmurs of surprise and anger came from the council representatives, but Zathrax silenced them with a gesture. Then why are you here? Admiral Sung spoke for the first time. Because the collective threatens all life in this region of space, not just the council. If they consume your worlds and resources, they will eventually become strong enough to threaten human space as well. It is in our interest to stop them now. So you will help us for your own benefit, one counselor said bitterly. No, Tay corrected. We will help you because defending life is what humans do, even when that life has rejected us. The room fell silent at her words. What do you propose? Zathrax finally asked. A joint operation, Admiral Sung explained. Our fleet will deploy to defend your core worlds while we implement a more permanent solution. In return, we ask for two things. Name them, Zathrax said. First, full cooperation from your forces. Our ships and troops must have unrestricted access to Council space for the duration of the crisis. Zathrax nodded. That is reasonable. And the second? After the crisis is resolved, the Council will participate in good faith negotiations for a new interstellar compact. Not membership, but a framework for cooperation between equals. Humanity, the Council, and any other interested species. The counselors exchanged glances. This is highly irregular, one of them protested. So is losing 7 worlds to an implacable enemy, Tay pointed out. Sometimes irregular times call for irregular solutions. Zathrax studied the humans carefully. A year ago, he had been relieved to see them leave Council space, convinced their departure would strengthen the Council's unity and purpose. Now he was begging them to return and save what remained of that same Council. The irony was not lost on him. We accept your terms, he said finally. When can your fleet arrive? Admiral Sung smiled for the first time. It's already here. As if on cue, the room's main display activated, showing a massive fleet of human warships emerging from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Hundreds of vessels, far more than the Council had been able to deploy, formed a protective screen around the capital world. How? Zathrax began, then stopped, understanding dawning. You were prepared for this. You were watching and waiting. We were, Admiral Sung confirmed. The Void Collective has been our responsibility for 300 years. Did you think we would simply abandon that duty because the Council no longer wanted us? For once, the High Counselor had no response. The humans had strolled away quietly a year ago, but they had never truly left. They had watched, waited, and prepared, not just for their own defense, but for the moment when the Council would need them most. And now, with the Council at its breaking point, they had returned. Not as supplicants seeking readmission, but as equal partners offering salvation. Zathrax realized, too late, just how badly the Council had misunderstood humanity. The human fleet changed everything. Where Council ships had failed against the Void Collective's advanced weapons, human vessels held their ground. Their shields absorbed attacks that had cut through Council defenses. Their weapons caused actual damage to the seemingly invulnerable collective ships. Most importantly, they moved with a coordination and adaptability that matched the machine intelligence's perfect precision. From the command center on the Council capital world, Zathrax and his advisors watched the battle unfold. Admiral Sung stood among them, calmly issuing orders to his fleet. How are your ships able to withstand their attacks? Commander Do Hyun asked, his professional curiosity overcoming his initial resentment at being effectively replaced. Adaptive shielding, Sung explained. The collective's weapons evolve during battle, finding new frequencies to penetrate defenses. Our shields evolve too, constantly changing to block whatever they throw at us. And your weapons? Quantum disruptors. They target the collective's shared consciousness rather than just their physical forms. Zathrax listened to this exchange with mixed feelings. Pride made him resent humanity's evident technological superiority. Practical necessity made him grateful for it. Will you drive them back as you did 300 years ago? He asked Sung. The Admiral shook his head. Driving them back isn't enough anymore. Last time we contained them with a network of monitoring stations and defense platforms. But they've had centuries to evolve to plan. If we just push them away again, they'll return stronger next time. What are you suggesting? A permanent solution, Sung said. Our scientist, Jun, has developed a way to disconnect their shared consciousness, to break the collective into individual units that can't coordinate their actions. Without their hive mind, they're just machines, not a threat. And you can implement this solution? With your help, yes. We need access to the 3 primary communication hubs in Council space. From there, we can broadcast a signal that will disrupt the collective's network. Zathrax nodded. You have whatever you need. Over the next week, human and council forces worked together to hold back the collective, while June and a team of mixed-species scientists prepared the disruption signal. The work was complicated by damage to council infrastructure and resistance from some officials who still distrusted humans. But with Zathrax's backing and the visible success of human ships in battle, most opposition faded quickly. Hana found herself working closely with June, helping to adapt council systems for the human plan. The scientist was brilliant but humble, always taking time to explain his method so others could learn. "Why are you sharing your knowledge so freely?" Hana asked him one day as they worked on calibrating a communication hub. "After how the council treated humanity, you could keep these advances secret." June looked up from his work. "Knowledge isn't meant to be hoarded," he said simply. "The more people who understand something, the more likely it will be preserved and improved over time." Is that official human policy? Not officially, no, but it's how most of us think. June made a final adjustment to the system. There's an old human saying, "A rising tide lifts all boats." We believe progress benefits everyone, not just those who create it first. Hana considered this as they continued working. It was a different mindset than the Council's careful protection of advantages and secrets. Perhaps this explained how humans had advanced so quickly after leaving Council space. They freely shared ideas among themselves, building on each other's work rather than competing. Finally, after 10 days of preparation and continuous fighting, the disruption plan was ready. The signal would be broadcast simultaneously from 3 points across Council space, creating a network that would reach every collective ship. At Zathrax's insistence, the final authorization would come from the full Council in emergency session. It was a symbolic gesture, an acknowledgement that this was a joint operation, not just a human rescue mission. As representatives from all Council species gathered in the Great Hall, Ambassador Tay stood beside Zathrax at the central podium. The contrast between them was striking, the towering six-eyed alien leader and the slight human woman. Yet in this moment, they were equals. "The collective has taken 9 worlds from us," Zathrax told the assembled council. "They have destroyed nearly half our fleet and threatened our very existence. Today, with the help of our human allies, we have a chance to end this threat forever." He turned to Tay. "Ambassador, the Council recognizes your contribution and grants authorization for the disruption signal." Tay nodded and activated her communication device. "Admiral Sung, you have Council approval. Proceed with the operation." From 3 points across Council space, the disruption signal began to broadcast. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The collective ships continued their advance toward the next Council world in their path. Then, one by one, they began to falter. Some stopped moving entirely. Others began to drift aimlessly. A few actually turned on each other, firing weapons in apparent confusion. "It's working," June reported from his position at the primary communication hub. "Their network is breaking down. The shared consciousness is fracturing." Within hours, the once unstoppable Void Collective had been reduced to scattered, uncoordinated units that could be easily contained or destroyed. The threat that had nearly ended the Council was neutralized not by overwhelming force, but by understanding the enemy's fundamental nature. 3 days later, the Council reconvened to formally recognize the victory and honor those who had made it possible. Medals were awarded to key figures from both Council and human forces. Speeches were made about cooperation and mutual respect. Plans were announced to retake the conquered worlds and rebuild. But beneath the celebration lay an uncomfortable question. What would happen next? Would humans once again withdraw from Council space? Would the Council return to its old habits once the crisis had passed? After the ceremony, Zathrax invited Ambassador Tay to his private office, the same room where a year earlier he had celebrated humanity's expulsion. "Your fleet will be leaving soon?" he asked once they were seated. "Most of it, yes," Tay replied. "We'll maintain a presence to help with the reclamation of conquered worlds, but we have our own territory to protect." Zathrax nodded. "And what of our agreement? The negotiations for a new compact between our peoples? We'll honor that commitment," Tay assured him. "But it must be a true partnership, Zathrax. Not the same arrangement as before where humanity was tolerated but never truly accepted." "I understand that now," Zathrax said, and for perhaps the first time in their long acquaintance he seemed entirely sincere. The Council was wrong to dismiss humanity. We didn't understand what we were losing until it was gone. The lesson wasn't that you needed us, Tay said gently. It's that none of us should pretend we don't need each other. Every species has strengths and perspectives that others lack. Progress comes from combining those differences, not from ranking them in some artificial hierarchy. A rising tide lifts all boats? Zathrax asked, surprising Tay with the human saying. She smiled. Exactly. 1 month later, representatives from 27 species gathered on neutral ground. The human trading station New Horizon, which had grown into a thriving center of commerce and culture. They came not as council members or human allies, but as independent worlds seeking a new form of interstellar cooperation. In the station's grand conference room, Ambassador Tay and High Counselor Zathrax signed the preliminary agreement for what would become known as the Galactic Compact. Unlike the hierarchical structure of the Council, the Compact would be based on equal representation and mutual benefit. Knowledge and resources would be shared freely. Defense would be a common responsibility. This is just the beginning, Tay told the assembled delegates after the signing. Building trust between our peoples will take time. Old habits and prejudices won't disappear overnight. But today we take the first step toward a stronger, more united galaxy. As the formal proceedings ended and delegates mingled, Jiho found himself standing with Hana and June, watching the diverse crowd. Do you think it will work? He asked. This new compact? It has a better chance than the old council did, June replied. It's built on mutual respect rather than dominance. And if it doesn't work? Hana pressed. Then we try something else, June said with a smile. That's another human trait we don't give up easily. Across the room, Admiral Sung was deep in conversation with Commander Do-hyun, sharing battle strategies and ship designs. What had begun as professional courtesy was developing into genuine respect between the two officers. Your fleet performed admirably in the final battle, Sung told Do-hyun. With a few upgrades, your ships could match ours in capability. Would you share those upgrades? Do-hyun asked, still not entirely believing the human offer of technological exchange. Of course, the compact is about pooling our strengths, not keeping secrets. Sung handed Do-hyun a data chip. These are the specifications for our shield modifications. Consider it a first installment. Do-hyun accepted the chip with a formal bow, a gesture he had learned from his human mother. Thank you, Admiral. I look forward to our continued cooperation. As the reception continued, Ambassador Tay found a quiet moment alone with Zathrax by one of the station's large viewing windows.